LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the March 18th edition of LiberalViewer Monday Media Mix-Up. Thanks for joining me and Cheech here, who I think is ready to get down. He was ready to get down before I started, but thanks for joining us. I will be using the 13 best, most newsworthy clips from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States, for what should be a really informative, educational, fair use, media criticism, and political commentary show for you all today. Oh, Chong is over here too. I do have a bonus Cheech and Chong the Kittens clip at the end of the program, though they may be making some live appearances, as Cheech just did, and Chong seems almost ready. But as you can see from the video title, my main topic is Democrats break with Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu, but not Israel. And this follows up on my December 5th Monday Media Mix-Up, where I was talking about how Biden might be breaking with the Israeli government as far back as then over the infliction of civilian casualties. And that is also one of the reasons that Chuck Schumer came out and made this speech on Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader. All the news stories about it say the top ranking Jew in the United States government, which I don't know if, I guess that's true, but he came out and said that Israel should have new elections when the war against Hamas is winding down, and that Bibi Netanyahu had lost his way and he was an obstacle to peace and an obstacle to a two-state solution, which that's all true. But anyway, it was a big news item over the Sunday shows, covered on all of them, although not so much in the news summaries. And I actually have it for my political comedy. They talked about it on their like more fluffy show on Fox News, the Big Weekend Show yesterday. And they had on former MTV VJ, if you can remember, Kennedy, who tried to make this joke, but talking about what the Democrats and the Biden administration were doing regarding Israel and supporting Israel, but not Benjamin Netanyahu, although she missed a good joke. So I'll start playing that clip and tell you the good joke that she missed first over here.
I mean, politics is in play here, right? I mean, Biden in the Michigan primary lost to the uncommitted vote in Dearborn, Michigan. You've got a state like Michigan has the largest Arab population in the country. Surely Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden are paying attention to that.
Well, they are. And so
now she should have said they are paying attention and stop calling me Shirley. She missed the stop calling me Shirley joke. It was a perfect setup, did not do the stop calling me Shirley joke. But she tries to do another joke and then says something stupid, and I'll start the clip again. Sorry, I couldn't resist pointing out the stop calling me Shirley joke that was missed.
Kennedy, I mean, politics is in play here, right? I mean, Biden in the Michigan primary lost to the uncommitted vote in Dearborn, Michigan. You've got a state like Michigan has the largest Arab population in the country. Surely Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden are paying attention to that.
Well, they are. And so at the beginning of the conflict, it was really tough to figure out where the president stood and where the administration stood. There was a lot of waffling. You know, there was a lot of fence sitting. And when you have waffling and fence sitting at the same time, it's a recipe for obesity. We all know that. Having said that,
nobody wants that. Yeah.
It's one thing to give a philosophical speech. It's one thing to say, I'm an anti-war senator and I will do whatever I can in my power. It's an incredibly powerful position to be the Senate Majority Leader. I will do anything in my power to make sure that we have peace here and across the globe, especially with our allies. That's not what he's saying. He is not making a philosophical argument. He is making a political directive in the office of Senate Majority Leader on the floor in his professional capacity. I think that is incredibly irresponsible. It's not like someone caught him on an iPhone at dinner saying, yeah, you know, Netanyahu is a real jerk. That's okay to have an opinion, especially in a private setting, but this was too public and it is too condescending, and it's so patriarchal to tell Israel what to do as though the United States and as the Senate Majority Leader leading that charge, and we're the ones who determine their foreign policy. That is not the case.
Patriarchal? I don't even know how the word patriarchal fits into that argument she just made. That was the stupid thing I think she said. And then the joke she tried to make about waffling and fence sitting being a recipe for obesity. Was that even a joke? I don't know. Maybe they need to do one of those MTV behind the music documentaries on Kennedy's fall from grace, becoming, I think someone was saying she's a right-wing Looney Tune on Fox News. I don't know what happened to Kennedy. I mean, I actually watched MTV back when she was a VJ, and she didn't seem like this then, but I guess they say some people just go right-wing as they get older. I'm pretty old, didn't happen to me so far, but anyway, that was what I picked out for the political comedy clip, and it's on the main topic, and most of the news summaries didn't really focus on what Chuck Schumer did. I think it shows up in the Fox News Sunday news summary you're about to see. Fox News was the only one to cover Haiti in their opening news segment, although there was some other coverage of it on the other shows. But Fox News Sunday had the longest news summary because they had two reporters. First, Bryan Llenas in Haiti, and I can't fault Fox News for reporting that as important news, and it's a humanitarian crisis very close to our shores, and I think they do it though because they want to increase the talking point that the Biden administration has chaos all over the globe, and they did end up blaming. You'll see I can't remember if in Bryan Llenas' report they blame Biden for this, but they definitely did on Fox News in the last week, this whole Haiti situation. And then they have Lucas Tomlinson covering the 2024 presidential race, but it's they don't really talk so much about all the inflammatory comments that Trump made on the campaign trail over the weekend, as you'll see covered in the next three news summaries after. So I just wanted to preface the Fox News Sunday news summary because it's not really news, and you'll see it's somewhat different from the rest, even though, like I said, Bryan Llenas is sort of reporting news from Haiti, or the Haitian-Dominican Republic border over here.
Hello from Fox News in Washington. Happy St. Patrick's Day. We begin with some headlines out of Haiti, where the Caribbean country has been rocked by gang violence, and the prime minister has resigned, leaving no clear leader in place. The U.S. State Department has announced a charter flight for Americans with valid passports who've been stranded since the unrest began, but warns it could be a very dangerous time getting to that flight area. Over 1 million Haitians are now on the verge of famine as food supplies are running out. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says most of the 9 people who will sit on Haiti's Transitional Council have been named, hoping that will help bring an end to the chaos. In a moment, we'll talk live with White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby. But first, Bryan Llenas is on the Dominican Republic border there with Haiti. Hello, Bryan.
Shannon, after initially saying that they would not evacuate Americans that were trapped in Haiti, the U.S. State Department on Saturday said it had secured a charter flight for a limited number of Americans from Cap Haitian, a 5.5-hour drive through gang-controlled territory from the capital of Port-au-Prince. The U.S. warns Americans to travel at their own risk while they work to secure other evacuation options from the capital.
Our families are scared. They just want us home.
Inside Haiti, trapped Americans feel abandoned by the U.S.
We believe in our government. They can do better than leaving us stranded in Haiti right now. This is not America.
9 Americans for the organization Mission of Grace are stuck in southwest Haiti after evacuating 300 orphan Haitian children from a gang-controlled area. Gangs in Haiti threaten civil war and genocide. An estimated 80% of Haiti's capital of Port-au-Prince is controlled by gangs who have burned down hundreds of buildings and openly shoot and kill people in the streets.
A lot of the gang members are just kids that are excited to be shooting at stuff. They're trigger happy. They're crazy.
Brian Stearns says his nonprofit Project Dynamo is working to rescue 36 Americans from Haiti before an international police force led by Kenya enters the nation, potentially jumpstarting more violence.
The gang side are going to need leverage. They're not going to be able to fight them face to face and nose to nose. They're going to need leverage. And when that happens, almost always it equates to kidnappings and hostages.
Aid groups say 1.4 million Haitians are on the verge of famine. When merchants go out into the streets looking for money to feed our children and wives, we find nothing. Thousands of Haitians weekly cross over the border into the Habon Dominican Republic to buy necessities. The mayor says the DR is doing all it can. I feel like the international community has turned their backs on Haiti, or perhaps they've just grown tired, because how many chances have we given the Haitian people? The DR, Texas, and Florida are preparing for a potential mass exodus of Haitian migrants. Governor Ron DeSantis deploying more than 250 additional officers and soldiers and more than a dozen air and sea craft to Florida's southern coast and the Keys. Shannon?
Bryan Llenas on the Dominican Republic border with Haiti. Thank you very much, Brian. We turn now to Lucas Tomlinson over at the White House. Okay, Lucas, let's start with campaign 2024. Both President Biden and former President Trump making the case now officially for a second term.
That's right, Shannon. Good morning. President Biden speaking at the annual Gridiron Dinner here in Washington, joking about his age and stamina, and Donald Trump holding a rally in Ohio focusing on the economy and taking shots at Biden. But it was a floor speech by the Senate Majority Leader about Israel that still reverberates.
A new election is the only way to allow for a healthy and open decision-making process about the future of Israel.
President Biden appeared to endorse the speech and says he was given a heads up.
Mr. President, do you agree with Chuck Schumer that Netanyahu should go?
Biden on a campaign stop in Michigan where over 100,000 people voted uncommitted in the primary. It's a state he narrowly won in 2020 and where Donald Trump won 4 years earlier.
The Democrats are very bad for Israel. Israel sticks with them. Biden is so bad for Israel, they should have never been attacked.
Benny Gantz, a rival of Israel's prime minister, responded to Schumer saying, Israel is a robust democracy, and only its citizens will decide its future and leadership. Israel's war on Hamas not the only foreign policy challenge Biden faces in the region. Iran's proxy forces in Yemen continue its attacks on commercial shipping, sinking one recently, despite 2 months of near daily strikes by the U.S. Navy. G7 leaders warning Iran not to transfer ballistic missiles to Russia, which would be used against Ukraine. This weekend, Russia is holding presidential elections. The result is not in doubt, despite voter protests, including setting fire to polling places and tampering with ballot boxes.
Vladimir Putin first rose to power nearly a quarter century ago when Bill Clinton was here as president. Only Joseph Stalin has ruled Russia longer. Shannon?
All right, Lucas Tomlinson at the White House. Thank you very much, Lucas. Joining us now, White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby.
And I will have a clip of White House National Security Advisor for Communications John Kirby's interview with Shannon Bream on Fox News Sunday. Actually, I have 2 newsmaker clips. And by the way, if you want to see short summaries of all 13 of my clips, they're down in the video description right under Media Mentioned. And then the sources of all my clips, or almost all the clips, are down there as well. But I think I pretty much pre-criticized that Fox News Sunday news summary as not all that newsy, or the Haiti coverage was voluminous and maybe meant to scare Fox News viewers. There was a little line in there about, Americans feel abandoned by the U.S. government. That was the anti-Biden part of it. But I think if you combine it with what Lucas Tomlinson did about Iran and the Houthis and the Russian election and just trying to make it look like Biden's foreign policy isn't going well. And you also saw that Lucas Tomlinson did talk about the Chuck Schumer statement that is the big turning point that prompted me to make the topic of this video, the Democrats turning against or breaking with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Bibi Netanyahu to his friends, I guess, like Chuck Schumer is apparently one of his longtime friends. Well, I don't know. Anyway, he isn't a great friend of peace in the Middle East or a two-state solution, especially, as I was talking about earlier. And that doesn't really get covered in the next three news summaries. This well, I think the Chuck Schumer, it's in one of them, but it's mostly about Trump's inflammatory comments on the campaign trail. And you saw that Lucas Tomlinson talked about what Biden said at the Gridiron dinner, and then Trump's comments on the economy, which included the whole bloodbath comment that got so much play, and I think is going to be in this ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos news summary from Martha Raddatz, along with the comments that the January 6 defendants and people who've been convicted of crimes at the Capitol on January 6th, that they're not prisoners, they're hostages, and Trump even started his rally with like their version of the Star-Spangled Banner, and I think that's in this next one. It's in one of the next three, or more than one of the next three, I think, and I'll talk about that a little more after we watch Martha Raddatz's news summary on ABC together.
Good morning and welcome to This Week. It was a week that began with President Biden and former President Trump officially clinching enough delegates to secure their party's nominations, setting up a November rematch that many Americans say they don't want. We'll hear from some of those dissatisfied voters. But we begin this morning with the latest inflammatory comments by former President Trump on the campaign trail. The contrast between the two candidates on clear display. And the general election is just getting started. Straight from his private jet to the podium, a freewheeling speech by former President Donald Trump last night in Ohio. It began, as many Trump rallies do these days, with a song by the so-called January 6th prison choir.
Please rise for the horribly and unfairly treated January 6th hostages.
Made up of those serving time for storming the Capitol. Trump framing them as hostages, patriots.
You see the spirit from the hostages, and that's what they are, as hostages. The first day we get into office, we're going to save our country. We're going to work with the people to treat those unbelievable patriots.
But that was just the beginning. Trump stoking more fear about migrants at the southern border. Trump at one point saying they're not people.
Well, I don't know if you call them people. In some cases, they're not people, in my opinion, but I'm not allowed to say that because the radical left says that's a terrible thing to say. These are bad. These are animals.
And while blasting the auto industry's foreign manufacturing and embrace of electric vehicles, the former president making this comment.
Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country.
A top Trump advisor taking to X to clean that up, saying he was referring only to the auto industry, writing that President Joe Biden's insane EV mandate will slaughter the American auto industry. The Biden campaign seizing on Trump's statement to accuse the president's Republican rival of threatening political violence and wanting another January 6th. And at an off-camera gala for the press last night, President Biden warning of what he called the toxic cycle of anger and conspiracy. Trump also directly attacked Biden throughout the speech, even saying this.
How about a couple of more indictments, Joe, you dumb son of a... dumb son of a...
And I'm joined now by House Intelligence Committee Chair Congressman Mike Turner.
So yeah, I thought actually ABC there did the best job of covering all the Trump inflammatory comments. If you think that was the top story that needed to be covered first, which I'm not sure it was, but I mean, they're all awful. The whole thing about calling some of those immigrants, they're not even people. I mean, dehumanizing the people who you oppose or who you are, demonizing and dehumanizing a group of people, that is like total fascist playbook. So I guess it's important to report that. You didn't see that on the Fox News Sunday news summary. Nothing. The whole bloodbath thing, which I think ABC put in the context of maybe it's an economic bloodbath for auto manufacturers, or who knows what Trump meant, because his speeches aren't really that coherent. They're kind of meandering, and they go between a whole bunch of different topics. And then you also saw the other I think all the inflammatory comments were in there, that calling Biden a dumb son of a bitch or whatever is in there. And anyway, that is also covered in the NBC News Meet the Press news summary, better than what you saw from Fox News Sunday. Maybe not quite as good as what you saw from ABC. The NBC News Meet the Press news summary is about the same length, about 2 minutes 22 seconds, and I'll talk about that 2 minute 22 seconds with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
Good Sunday morning and happy St. Patrick's Day. In a week where Donald Trump officially became the presumptive Republican nominee for president, his threats of retribution are mounting, promising one of his first acts as president would be to free those charged and convicted for attacking the Capitol on January 6th, nearly 800 of whom have pled guilty to their crimes. On Ukraine, while he publicly says he supports a loan, he reportedly told Hungary's authoritarian leader in private he would cut off aid if reelected. And last night at a rally in Ohio, he said some undocumented immigrants aren't people.
If I had prisons that were teeming with MS-13 and all sorts of people that they've got to take care of for the next 50 years, right? Young people, they're in jail for years. And if you call them people, I don't know if you call them people. In some cases, they're not people, in my opinion.
And while addressing the auto industry, the former president made this ominous comment.
We're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars.
The Trump campaign tried to clarify, saying he was talking about the auto industry. But the Biden campaign seized on the comment, saying Mr. Trump is doubling down on his threats of political violence. At the same time, Donald Trump's delay tactics with the legal system seem to be working for now. The New York hush money case, scheduled to begin next week, now delayed for 30 days, giving the defense more time to review documents. And in Georgia, the election interference case, the lead prosecutor, Nathan Wade, resigned Friday. Wade was scheduled to appear on this broadcast today, but canceled last minute, citing a family emergency. There's one place Trump didn't get a break: his own Vice President Mike Pence, whose life was threatened on January 6th, who said this Friday.
Donald Trump is pursuing and articulating an agenda that is at odds with the conservative agenda that we governed on during our 4 years. And that's why I cannot in good conscience endorse Donald Trump.
Joining me now, Republican Senator Bill Cassidy.
And I don't have a clip of Bill Cassidy. The NBC News Meet the Press clip I'm going to show you is Democratic Senator Ben Cardin responding to this whole Chuck Schumer says that Bibi Netanyahu has lost his way, obstacle to peace. Israel needs early elections, my main topic. But there you saw, like I said, NBC News Meet the Press also did a pretty good job of covering the Trump inflammatory statements. The one I was trying to remember after the last clip is the January 6th convicts are actually hostages and patriots, and he's might pardon them on his first day in office because he's going to be a dictator on day one. We know that. And I think actually NBC News Meet the Press did a better job of showing the full context of the bloodbath. The Trump's use of the word, it's going to be a bloodbath, or his, what was that about? The sale of cars, or the car industry, or did he just throw that in for no apparent reason? Or anyway, that was pretty good context. And anyway, the next news summary, the second to last one, is CBS News Face the Nation, where Margaret Brennan actually didn't really do a news summary, but she had on former Vice President Mike Pence, and as part of her first question, she covered the Trump inflammatory statements in the minute that I'll talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation on this St. Patrick's Day. Former Vice President Mike Pence joins us in person in studio. Good morning to you and happy St. Patrick's Day.
Good morning, Margaret. Good to be with you.
There's a lot to get to with you today, but I want to begin with some remarks Mr. Trump made yesterday at a rally in Ohio. He walked onto the stage to a song recorded by a choir of prisoners facing charges for their role in the violence of January the 6th. Take a listen.
You see the spirit from the hostages, and that's what they are, as hostages. They've been treated terribly and very unfairly, and you know that, and everybody knows that. And we're going to be working on that soon. The first day we get into office, we're going to save our country, and we're going to work with the people to treat those unbelievable patriots, and they were unbelievable patriots and are.
I know in the past you've said Mr. Trump's reckless words endangered you and your family on that day. What do you think when you hear him refer to those people facing charges as hostages and patriots?
Right.
So, yeah, like I said, not really a news summary from Face the Nation, but they did cover the Trump inflammatory comments, especially the ones that were directed at January 6th, because Margaret Brennan had that interview with former Vice President Mike Pence. And by the way, down in the video description under sources, if you click on the Face the Nation link, it goes to their YouTube channel where they upload the entire episode. You can watch Mike Pence's answer if you really want to. I don't have a clip of Mike Pence because I have a clip of Senator Chris Van Hollen talking about the UN Relief Agency that I thought was important for the final clip, clip number 13. But before I get to that, I want to show you the final news summary here, CNN's State of the Union, which is actually right focused on my main topic because Dana Bash had Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on the program, and so spent the first minute of the program preparing for that with this clip.
Hello, I'm Dana Bash in Washington, where the State of our Union is thinking the stakes couldn't be higher. We begin today with the Israel-Hamas war and a shift here in the U.S. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, a long and steadfast supporter of Israel, made a stunning break with his longtime friend, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and called him an obstacle to peace in the region. That comes as the U.S. works to build a floating pier to deliver aid to desperate people in war-torn Gaza. While early this week, negotiators are expected to, later this week, I should say, are expected to start talks again about a potential deal to pause fighting and free more of the Israeli hostages held by Hamas since October 7th, when Hamas started all this by attacking Israel and brutally killing more than 1,000 civilians. Here with me now is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
And I am going to show you an extended clip of Dana Bash's interview with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in just a moment. I thought that was a good intro for my main topic, and you saw there Dana Bash did claim that Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is a longtime friend of Bibi Netanyahu. I guess if Dana Bash says it on CNN, it must be true. I don't know. But that's what I was referring to earlier when I said that somebody had said that they were friends. And anyway, that is the main topic I'm now going to cover with the rest of these clips. It's going to start with what I think was a bad cross-examination of Bibi Netanyahu by Dana Bash on CNN's State of the Union. She didn't really ask about how he had already chosen partisan sides like 13 years ago during the Obama administration, and she did ask about what Chuck Schumer said and how, and I think she did do an okay job of cross-examining some of his answers, especially about how polls say that he's supported by all, a huge majority of Israelis, which isn't really true. But anyway, let's watch Dana Bash's interview with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu together, and then I'll criticize what she didn't ask after we watch that together over here.
Let's talk about what happened here in the U.S. this week. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer gave a pivotal speech and said, "You have lost your way," and called you an obstacle to peace. Take a listen.
The Netanyahu coalition no longer fits the needs of Israel after October 7th. And I believe that holding a new election, once the war starts to wind down, would give Israelis an opportunity to express their vision for the post-war future.
Chuck Schumer is the highest-ranking Jewish elected official here in America, a staunch supporter of Israel. What's your response?
I think what he said is totally inappropriate. It's inappropriate for to go to a sister democracy and try to replace the elected leadership there. That's something that the Israeli public does on its own, and we're not a banana republic. I think the only government that we should be working on to bring down now is the terrorist tyranny in Gaza, the Hamas tyranny that murdered over 1,000 Israelis, including some dozens of Americans, and is holding Americans and Israelis hostage. That's what we should be focused on. And as far as what Senator Schumer said, the majority of Israelis support our governments. 82% of Americans support Israel instead of Hamas, but the majority of Israelis support the policies that we're leading. Go into Rafah, destroy the remaining Hamas terrorist battalions, make sure that we don't put into Gaza, instead of Hamas, the Palestinian Authority that educates their children towards terrorism and the annihilation of Israel, and also an enormous majority here, including 99 Knesset members to 9, oppose the idea of ramming down a Palestinian state down our throats.
I want to get to some of those polls.
The majority of Israelis, this is a wake-up call to Senator Schumer. The majority of Israelis support the policies of my government. It's not a fringe government. It represents the policies supported by the majority of the people. If Senator Schumer opposes these policies, he's not opposing me. He's opposing the people of Israel.
Okay, I'm going to get to some of the polls that you cited in one moment, but I just want to make sure that our viewers understand that Chuck Schumer gave the big speech, but he has support in many ways from the President of the United States. President Biden is a self-described Zionist. Even he is starting to distance himself from the way you are handling the war. He called what Schumer said a good speech. He said that he shared the concern of many Americans. They aren't criticizing Israel. They're criticizing you and your right-wing coalition.
Dana, there's a fallacy that is being perpetrated here. And you should take polls, you'll have your own polls, and check whether the people of Israel support the policies that I'm being criticized for. That is, supporting the policies of going into Rafah, destroying a quarter of the remaining Hamas terrorist army. That's like leaving a quarter of the Nazi terrorist army in Germany and saying, no, we're not going to finish the last quarter, and we're not going into Berlin. Most Israelis overwhelmingly support the position that we have to go in. They oppose the idea of ramming down a two-state solution or a terrorist state against their will, because they think that this will endanger Israel's future. They support those policies that I'm putting forward, and to present that as something that is, I'm an outlier, it doesn't represent the majority of the people of Israel, is simply a fallacy. And I'll tell you the other fallacy is, they're saying, well, most Palestinians don't support the Hamas massacre. In fact, 85% of the Palestinians do support, unfortunately, the Hamas massacre. So they've got two fallacies here, and you can readily check that. The majority of Israelis support the policies that I have on prosecuting the war, which is what I'm being criticized for.
Well,
so it's not just me. It's the people of Israel who believe that we have to have this resolute victory to assure a future.
I think that what you're being criticized for is not prosecuting the war. It's the way that you're prosecuting the war. So I'm going to get to that in 1 minute. But I just want to add a little bit of sort of context to the way that the Biden administration is pushing back. Another way is that the U.S. intelligence community warned that, quote, distrust of Netanyahu's ability to rule has deepened and broadened across the public. And then back to the polls, you're talking about support for the idea of toppling Hamas. That makes perfect sense. There were other polls in Israel, 3 major Israeli television stations that said what Israelis also support are early elections. That's what I really want to focus on here is Senator Schumer not calling to sort of topple the government, but specifically says when the war winds down, will you commit to calling new elections? That's my question. Will you?
Dana, 2/3, first of all, what you said is wrong. The vast majority of Israelis oppose early elections until the war doesn't end. We've just had many polls on that. Look, a lot of the polls are twisted.
Channel 12 says, Channel 12 says 64% of Israelis support early elections.
But all polls show that's not. No, I'm afraid they asked them the question, do you support it during the war? And they said no.
But that's not what Schumer is calling for. He's calling for new elections when the war winds down.
Well, we'll see when we win the war. And until we win the war, I think Israelis understand that if we were to have elections now, before the war is won, resoundingly won, we would have at least 6 months of national paralysis, which means we would lose the war. If we don't win the war, we lose the war. And that would be not only a defeat for Israel, but a defeat for America too, because our victory is your victory. We're fighting these barbarians that are not merely threatening the survival of Israel,
when the war
but
winds down?
everything that we hold dear together.
Will you commit to new elections when the war winds down?
I think that's something for the Israeli public to decide. But it's not something. No, look, that's something for the Israeli people to decide. I think it's ridiculous to talk about it. It's like after 9/11, after 9/11, you're in the midst of fighting the war against Al-Qaeda, and an Israeli would say, you know what we need now is either new elections in the U.S. or if your system doesn't allow, then President Bush should resign and we should have an alternative leader. You don't do that.
Well, let's
you don't
talk
do
about
that to
why.
A sister democracy, to an ally. You don't talk about that. What you do talk about is how do we help you defeat what President Biden called sheer evil. You don't just stop after you destroyed 80% of sheer evil. You destroy 100% of sheer evil to allow a different future for Israelis and Palestinians alike.
Mr. Prime Minister, I want to talk about why the sentiment has changed. I mean, obviously, there has been huge support and still is really big support here in the U.S. and most corners of the world for you doing what you are saying. Your strategic goal is to defeat Hamas and to make sure that that kind of terror attack doesn't happen again. But what is happening, and the reason why the world is shifting in public sentiment, is the humanitarian crisis in.
And yeah, you can see there that Danabash then switches topics to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And you can, in fact, read the entire transcript of CNN's State of the Union at a link I just put in the live chat. And I do that because I'm criticizing Danabash. She did do some cross-examination there and tried to pin down Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu on, whether he would call for elections when the war was winding down, and also push back when he's talked about polls that showed he had a lot of support. There's a lot of support for his position in the short term, but in the long term, he doesn't have a lot of support from the Israeli public. So Danabash did push back in the interview somewhat. And that's why I showed you the whole 7.5 minutes there on his response to his apparently longtime friend, the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, saying that his time has passed and he's an obstacle to peace. And the one thing I wanted to criticize Danabash for not bringing up, I mentioned briefly earlier, was that it's actually Bibi Netanyahu who was most responsible for politicizing the U.S.-Israel relationship back during the Obama administration, when the Obama administration was trying to finish up the Iran deal and might have actually brought it to the Senate as a treaty if they had the support for it. But no, Bibi Netanyahu accepted an invitation from the Republican House of Representatives and gave a speech opposing Obama's policy, came to our Congress and took partisan sides. And Dana Bash never brought that up. It really didn't come up much on the Sunday morning news analysis shows. The best example I could find is on the Sunday show with Jonathan Capehart on MSNBC. I'm a big fan of Jonathan Capehart, and I like his show. Now it's on at like 3 p.m. Pacific time, Saturday and Sunday. The Saturday show and the Sunday show, I always watch it. And he made that point that here in like 27 seconds, he said something Dana Bash never mentioned when talking to Bibi Netanyahu, and should have over here.
And, you know, Basil, what I found interesting in the prime minister's response about you don't go to a sister democracy, and I remember Prime Minister Netanyahu coming to the United States at the invitation of the Republican Speaker of the House to speak before Congress in opposition to the Iran nuclear deal that the President of the United States was trying to get over the finish line.
So yeah, that point should have been made during the interview of Bibi Netanyahu by Dana Bash on CNN. I didn't really see that point anywhere on the Sunday morning shows other than Jonathan Capehart. It was almost made by Sarah Isker over on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, when Martha Raddatz was actually making an important point that, you know, if you are worried that you don't like the Biden administration because you think they're too pro-Israel, even though they're kind of breaking with Bibi Netanyahu, but, you know, Genocide Joe or whatever, that, you know, Joe Biden has been too pro-Israel in this conflict. Well, Donald Trump, even though he's not saying much about it, is going to be so much worse, so much more pro-Israel, anti-Palestinian. I mean, he moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. They're like naming settlements in the Golan Heights after Donald Trump, I think, during his presidency. And anyway, that's a point Martha Raddatz makes. And then Sarah Isker comes the closest to pointing out that Bibi Netanyahu is really responsible for the partisan split that between Bibi and Democrats and Republicans over here.
Will start to view Israel, and that could be a real change. And Sarah, the person we haven't heard a whole lot about on the war is Donald Trump. He did say that Israel must finish the problem in Gaza. What do you think that means? And he really has not been pinned down on this.
Remember, Donald Trump's policy is a lot more personality driven than it is philosophically driven. Netanyahu, I think, made a huge mistake by making himself a partisan figure in the United States and aligning himself with Republicans and with Trump and really against the Democratic Party. So it's interesting, in Israel, the only polling that shows Netanyahu as being popular is Netanyahu's poll. Every other poll shows that Netanyahu is an incredibly unpopular figure in Israel, same as he's becoming in the United States. Trump is sitting back both to see what happens to Netanyahu and also, as the Democrats become less friendly to Israel, watch Donald Trump become more friendly in reaction.
And any.
So yeah, like I said, that was the closest that I saw in the big five corporate outlet shows that I normally take my clips from, making the point that Bibi Netanyahu actually took partisan sides, pro-Republican, anti-Obama, pro-Trump in many ways. And this is kind of the backlash to Bibi's former boo-boo. I actually almost use the phrase Bibi's boo-boo in the title, but I decided that was like too cutesy. But anyway, the next clip is from Fox News Sunday, and actually I've been reading some of the live comments along the way. I saw multiple comments from one of my live viewers, is it, Z Alpha, I think, that was kind of claiming that our government is controlled by Israel, that Benjamin Netanyahu is really our president or whatever. And The only reason I bring that up is because that's actually a mistake that they made on Fox News Sunday in their interview with the Biden administration National Security Advisor for Communications, John Kirby here. They are asking him about Chuck Schumer's comments, and then they were supposedly going to show comments from the President of the United States, and oops, they showed what Bibi Netanyahu said by mistake. But I thought that was kind of funny. I almost used this as my political comedy clip, and I'll talk about it a little more after we watch it together.
Okay, so that speech that Chuck Schumer gave on Thursday, he lumped Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in with Hamas as one of the obstacles to peace. He called for new elections there. He said people within the government who oppose a Palestinian state are bigots. And I can only assume he means not only the Prime Minister, but Benny Gantz and others as well. Then our president said this about the speech.
To our friends in the international community, I say, is your memory so short, so quickly you forgot about October 7th, the worst massacre committed against Jews since the Holocaust? So quickly you are ready to deny Israel's right to defend itself against the monsters of Hamas?
Clearly not our president. But what our president said is he thought that it was a good speech and that he spoke for a lot of people. That is Prime Minister Netanyahu's reaction this morning saying, have you already forgotten? Does the president think that Benjamin Netanyahu is a bigot, that he's an impediment to peace, that he should be lumped in with Hamas?
Oh, these are two leaders that have known each other a long time, Shannon, and they don't agree on everything, haven't over 40 years. And there are certain aspects to the prosecution of operations in Gaza where we obviously don't agree with everything that Israel has done. But they have a relationship where they can talk to one another, and they do, and they will again. He is the Prime Minister of Israel. We respect the sovereignty of the Israeli people.
But does the president who called that speech a good speech agree there need to be new elections, that he shouldn't be the Prime Minister?
The president believes it's up to the Israeli people and the Israeli government to determine if and when there's going to be new elections. But he does, as he said shortly after Leader Schumer's very passionate speech, he recognizes that the leader was speaking for a lot of Americans who feel the same way about the way the war is going. We also have concerns about some of the operations and how they're being conducted. We need to make sure that civilians are protected and secured, that civilian casualties come down, that more trucks and assistance get in. And of course, we're still working on that temporary ceasefire to get all those hostages out.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. For my live viewer who believes that the U.S. government is actually run by Israel or whatever, you saw Shannon Bream on Fox News Sunday refer to Benjamin Netanyahu as our president by mistake. So that's all the evidence you need for your conspiracy theory, isn't it? It was right there. She had to disavow it after the clip played, but we all really know what's going on, right? Is that anyway? I had to point out that aspect of the Fox News Sunday clip there, and you saw Shannon Bream trying to claim that what Chuck Schumer did was like pro-Hamas and anti-Israel, and I mean, if they could, they'd probably call Chuck Schumer anti-Semitic, right? But here you see the Republican on Fox News Sunday, Representative Michael McCall, being asked about what you just saw John Kirby say and what Chuck Schumer breaking with his old friend Bibi Netanyahu, and he gets away with just saying, it's not right for us to try to topple another democracy. Like, calling for early elections isn't really toppling a government. I mean, when the United States wants to topple a government, we know how to topple governments. That's it. And this is also a place where someone should have probably asked Republican Michael McCall, who was in the Congress back in 2011 when the Republican Congress invited Bibi Netanyahu to take partisan sides during the Obama administration. But of course, Shannon Bream never asked about any of that. Lets Mike McCall get away with the whole toppling the government comment over here.
Let's start by getting your reaction to that Chuck Schumer speech saying, time for new elections, Bibi standing in the way of peace, lumping him in with Hamas. What do you make of that? You heard what Admiral Kirby had to say. Biden and Bibi have differences, but they can talk to each other.
But you don't talk about toppling a government in a democracy. That's what, I was with the ambassador Herzog from Israel at our retreat when this news came in, and it was very inappropriate. I think it was embarrassing. There's a way to talk about your differences, not to topple a government in a democratic country. And I think, Shannon, it's indicative of now the split in the Democratic Party between the base, which is not in the traditional Israeli alliance anymore. And I think what you're seeing is a pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel faction in the Democratic Party. I know they protest Schumer outside his home every morning, and perhaps that's why he's responding this way. But it's not a good sign, because usually Israel's always been bipartisan.
Well, there are, your Democratic colleagues, many of them raising questions about whether aid or weapons should be stopped. There should be conditions.
And I kept that playing so you could see Shannon Bream change subjects after Representative Michael McCall ended there by saying, usually, always, Israel has been bipartisan. I mean, whenever anyone says usually, always, you already know that they've contradicted themselves. But Israel's been bipartisan. What about 2011 when Bibi Netanyahu came and spoke to a Republican Congress at the invitation of John Boehner, the Speaker of the House, the Republican Speaker of the House at the time, to speak out against the Iran deal that the President of the United States was trying to negotiate at that time? Usually, always, Israel has been bipartisan, but I guess not. And didn't get brought up by Fox News, of course, because they have their own partisan political purposes for their broadcast. They're not really a news organization. They were actually created to be a partisan political outlet for the Republican Party by Roger Ailes, as you can see in this book over here, The Loudest Voice in the Room by Gabriel Sherman. Gives you the whole history of how that was the way Fox News was created, so that's still what they're doing. And anyway, I want to move on now to a non-partisan news source, Meet the Press, NBC News. Kristen Welker, I think, does a better job of cross-examining Senator Ben Cardin on this whole Chuck Schumer breaking with Bibi Netanyahu issue. Ben Cardin doesn't go so far as Chuck Schumer. He, it's up to the Israeli people, but he still talks about some of the problems with Bibi, with cross-examination from Kristen Welker that I will talk about a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
Welcome back. This week, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, the highest-ranking Jewish elected official in the country and a strong supporter of Israel, took to the Senate floor to call for new elections in Israel as the humanitarian crisis in Gaza worsens by the day.
As a lifelong supporter of Israel, it has become clear to me the Netanyahu coalition no longer fits the needs of Israel after October 7th. The world has changed radically since then, and the Israeli people are being stifled right now by a governing vision that is stuck in the past.
The backlash from Israel was swift. Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Herzog, calling the speech unhelpful and counterproductive. Republican lawmakers also lined up to criticize the Senate leader.
It is grotesque and hypocritical for Americans who hyperventilate about foreign interference in our own democracy to call for the removal of a democratically elected leader of Israel.
This is not only highly inappropriate, it's just plain wrong. For an American leader to play such a divisive role in Israeli politics while our closest ally in the region is in an existential battle for its very survival.
Schumer, however, found support in the White House, with President Biden weighing in Friday.
He made a good speech, and I think he expressed a serious concern shared not only by him but by many Americans.
Joining me now is Democratic Senator and Chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Ben Cardin. Senator Cardin, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Kristen, it's great to be with you. Thank you very much.
It is so great to have you here in person. I want to ask you about Leader Schumer's comments on the Senate floor. He called Prime Minister Netanyahu an obstacle to peace. President Biden said it was a good speech. Do you think Prime Minister Netanyahu is an obstacle to peace?
I think people should listen to his entire speech. Senator Schumer's speech came from his heart, what he believes is necessary for peace. He was very clear about Hamas needs to be eliminated, that there can be no peace in the Middle East for either the Palestinians or the Israelis with Hamas. The responsibilities for what is happening there is clearly on Hamas. Israel has the total right to defend itself. And then he's talking about how do we move after the war? How do we get peace in the region? And he was very clear about the fact that you need security. You need an authority for the Palestinians that will provide security for the Palestinians and the Israelis. But you also need to have a pathway to two states living together in peace. And I think he was very clear that it's the Israelis, their system, need to give clear direction as to who they want to be their leaders.
Would you go so far, though, Senator? And I hear you saying he gave context in his speech, but would you go so far as to call Netanyahu an obstacle to peace, given his opposition to a two-state solution?
I think it's up to the Israelis to determine their own leaders. I recognize that. We had challenges with the Netanyahu coalition prior to October 7th, real concerns. It caused major division within Israel before October 7th. There's unity now because of the war. Let's see what happens after the war.
Well, you make a really interesting point, and in fact, according to a U.S. intelligence report, Netanyahu's viability as a leader may be in jeopardy. As you know, there have been protests throughout Israel because of how he's handling the war right now. Do you think Netanyahu is the right leader for this moment?
Well, we got to get past, I think the Israelis recognize they got to get past Hamas at this particular moment. Once there is security in Gaza and there's security for the Palestinians and the Israelis need to focus on who they want their leader to be. We don't want to see a repeat of October 7th. Nobody wants to see that. But it means you have to have a pathway towards peace. You need to have security, and you need two states living together side by side in peace. Who is the right leader? It's up to the Israelis.
Yeah, President Biden said that if Prime Minister Netanyahu goes into Rafah, that would be a red line for him.
Oh, Cheech is back here. Came to say hello, although I think might be ready to. Oh, he's okay. So yeah, that was Ben Cardin, and you saw at the beginning of that clip, NBC News Meet the Press actually did cover the Chuck Schumer statement and did a pretty good job of covering that issue, kind of like you saw on the CNN State of the Union minute before the Benjamin Netanyahu interview, and was even covered by Fox News Sunday briefly there. But anyway, I do have one more newsmaker clip to show you, and it's not exactly on the main topic, but it's Senator Chris Van Hollen making a really important point. That in it, the reason I included this clip is because I was thinking, that Democratic politicians not only need to break with the Netanyahu government and its policies in its war on Gaza at this point, that what Chuck Schumer did was important. But the other thing they need to do is to refute some of the disinformation that's coming from the Netanyahu government. And Chris Holland does a really good job of that. One of the pieces of disinformation they've been sending out is about the UN relief worker, the UN relief agency, UNRWA, and they're trying to stop money and aid going through the UN Relief Agency based on disinformation. Oh, and this whole time I've had Cheech here. See? Cheech is very happy to be on camera, I guess. And Cheech and I will watch this final Newsmaker clip before the bonus Cheech and Chong clip I have at the end. But here's Chris Van Hollen debunking Israeli disinformation I've seen on Fox News over and over again over in this clip.
I want to go to some specific things that I know you're focusing on. There's this government funding debate happening in the next few days. Some Republicans want to cut off support for the UN agency UNRWA that supports about 6 million Palestinian refugees, Lebanon, Jordan, Gaza Strip, West Bank. You said last week senators need to read the classified report prepared by the Director of National Intelligence about the Netanyahu government claims about that agency. You seem to be implying that the links to terror groups are unfounded.
Oh, there's no doubt that the claim that Prime Minister Netanyahu and others are making that somehow UNRWA is a proxy for Hamas are just flat-out lies. That's a flat-out lie. If you look at the person who's in charge of operations on the ground in Gaza for UNRWA, it's about a 20-year U.S. Army veteran. You can be sure he is not in cahoots with Hamas. Netanyahu has wanted to get rid of UNRWA since at least 2017. That's been his goal, not just in Gaza, but also in the other places you talked about. And if you get rid of UNRWA in Gaza today, it is the primary distribution system for food and aid. So if you cut off funding for UNRWA in Gaza entirely, it means more people will starve, more people won't get the medical assistance they need, and so it would be a huge mistake to cut them off.
Can you explain why you believe that the Prime Minister is trying to dismantle UNRWA, which is the agency that has 13,000 people distributing aid? No one else has that kind of infrastructure in Gaza.
Well, that's exactly right. And there have been allegations made by the Netanyahu government that up to 14 of those 13,000 people were involved in the horrific October 7th attacks. We should investigate it. We should hold all those people accountable. But for goodness sakes, let's not hold 2 million innocent Palestinian civilians who are dying of starvation. Let's not hold them essentially accountable for the bad acts of 14 people. Netanyahu's wanted to get rid of UNRWA because he has seen them as a means to continue the hopes of the Palestinian people for a homeland of their own. And he has been opposed to a two-state solution. This has been his primary objective, stopping a two-state solution.
Back in February, you...
So yeah, and you can see the rest of that interview at a link under sources in the video description to the Face of the Nation YouTube page, where the entire episode is there, including the rest of what Chris Van Hollen said. But in some ways, that is like the greatest indictment of Bibi and Netanyahu, that about how he opposes the two-state solution. He wants to like crush the hope of the Palestinian people by stopping them from getting the UN relief aid. That's why I included that clip at the end there. And I mean, that's kind of the point here, that Bibi Netanyahu and his Likud party, if you look at the original charter of the Likud party, they also believe from the river to the sea. There's no place for Palestinians, that they have to have that entire land, the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, and all of the current state of Israel. They're also a ultra right-wing party, and that's why Bibi Netanyahu is so comfortable in his right-wing coalition. And I'm actually happy, as someone who is likely to vote for Democrats and for Biden in the 2024 election, that there is this movement from Democrats to break with Bibi Netanyahu and his right-wing coalition, and to look for better partners for that two-state solution. It's not Bibi Netanyahu with his river to the sea. It's not Hamas with their destruction of the entire Israeli state. It's somewhere in between, and that's where maybe the Biden administration will find a good policy. We have a few more months at least for such a policy implementation to take place before people's minds are set for the 2024 election in November. That is kind of the question. That's why there's a question mark at the end of my title about the Democrats breaking with Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu, but not Israel, question mark, because that's like the important policy line that Democrats have to navigate between now and the 2024 election. That's supporting Israel, supporting the rights of Palestinians, but rejecting the expansionist Zionism of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his right-wing coalition. That's the final commentary I wanted to add on all those clips I picked out. I hope all of you, my live viewers and my recorded show viewers, appreciate the time and effort I put into creating this live stream, picking out the 13 clips and adding my media criticism and political commentary for you all. Before I finish the show, I have given you some live looks at my, is he a kitten? They're like 6 months. How old are they now? They were born in, so yeah, they're like over 6 months old. So are they kittens? Well, whatever. I like to call cats kittens anyway. But I showed you Cheech multiple times during the live show, but I did save for you all a bonus Cheech and Chong, the cats or the kittens or the adolescent cats, maybe teen cats. I don't know. They make trouble, they get into trouble. Here's a clip I took earlier of them getting into trouble when they found themselves a paper towel roll to finish the show over here. Such troublemakers. Anyway, that's the end of my live stream. I hope all of you appreciated the time and effort I put into it, as I said earlier, and I will be back next Monday and every Monday all the way through the inauguration of whoever wins the 2024 election, or maybe someone else other than the winner will get inaugurated. Who knows? That's why I'm going to keep doing my Monday media mix-up all the way through January 2025. Then maybe changing over to Fox News bias videos again, or some different form of the channel, or that's all up in the air. I'm thinking about it. I'm talking about it. You can let me know what you think in the comment section. I saw some viewers did give me some positive comments about going back to Fox News bias videos when I mentioned this at the end of last week's live stream. But anyway, let me know what you think, and maybe I'll have some reason to upload a video in the next week. Otherwise, I'll see you next Monday for the Monday Media Mix-Up through January 2025. Thanks for joining me, and until then, I guess I'll be seeing all of you around the internet.